think it would be safe to say that I've had more uncertainty, change, disruptions to the norm, and I guess excitement on some level too in my life in the past 6 months than at any other time in my adult life that I can remember. It's been insane. It's affected this show. It's affected my my ties to pinball and my work and my living situation and all of it. There's been so much happening, and we're going to sort through some of it. We're going to get back to a little bit of normalcy here on episode 226 of Coast to Coast Pinball. Let's go. Welcome to Coast to Coast Pinball. My name is Nate Shivers. This is a podcast, a commentary. I am a man out of quarters. It's good to be with you. I would like to welcome you, friendly listeners, to episode 226 of this podcast, coming to you not live from San Diego, California, on a bright, sunny July 2nd afternoon in summertime in Southern California. The fair is going, the sun is out, the beaches are packed, all that good stuff, and we're gonna go through some stuff here on episode 226. This has been the episode that I've sort of been really excited to record and also somewhat dreading because a lot of stuff's been going on. Obviously, Coast to Coast Pinball has been on a hiatus. I have launched a new show called The Wide World of Pinball, which we'll talk about later, which is great. But it goes much deeper. There's reasons, a lot of which we'll talk about here. Life has been crazy. Some of it pertains directly to pinball. Some of it does not, and I'll share some of that with you, friendly listeners, if you're so interested. We will touch on why Coast to Coast went away, why Coast to Coast is back, what the future may look like, and how we got here. And it's I think it's interesting. It's interesting to me because it's my life. But if you're so interested to follow along, we'll touch on that here on episode 226. But first, 5 fast thoughts. All right, I sketched down some 5 fast thoughts for the first time in a long time. I felt out of practice. I had to break out the iPad and go through the interwebs and look at what I've been into, what I've been reading, think about what I've been doing as related to pinball. And I wanted to try and, return to normal on some level here with episode 226. So, fast thought number 1, my Metallica is all updated with the new code 1.7, which was a very kind of unexpected code update from our friends at Stern Pinball to release for Metallica. I have it updated. It erased all my high scores, which is fine. I put up a nice score on the first game, as I noticed a lot of people seem to do via some Pinside threads I was reading. And Teresa begged me to put her initials up for the fun of it, which I did. So now I'm constantly chasing that score down. I can't tell you. I read through the README file and I saw what some of the changes were. As far as the way it plays, I don't feel a ton of difference right now, but I know there's some subtle tweaks and fixes and dialings in of it. And I may go through that in more depth on a future episode, but for right now, I'm just enjoying playing Metallica with the latest, greatest code. Hopefully we see some more updates for other games, because I don't think a lot of people were pining for a Metallica code update. So I know there are some games clearly that do need some tweaking and extra love on the code front, and I'm sure that's coming down the pike in the not too distant future. Fast thought number 2. Excellent response to the new show I mentioned that I have started with good friends of this show, Josh Sharp and Steve Bowden, The Wide World of Pinball. It is my answer to the folks who claimed Coast to Coast Pinball had gotten all about competitive pinball, which wasn't true, and that Nate only cares about competitive pinball anymore, which also was not true. It is something I do care about, but it is not my only care. So I started a new show because I think that it's silly for me to be the only one talking competitive pinball in this forum, because I am fairly new to that world in the grand scheme of things, and I'm not all that great at it. So obviously Josh Sharp been on the show a ton of times. He'd been coming on monthly. We will probably not do that anymore because we've got the Wide World of Pinball. Steve Bowden been on the show a bunch of times, one of the top players in the world. So with those two guys, I think we have a great a great lineup to talk about all things in the competitive world, whether that be big tournaments, local leagues, small tournaments, super selfie leagues, the games and how they play in tournaments, and just sort of anything in that world. If you haven't checked Wide World of Pinball out, there are 2 episodes out. They're in the same RSS feed as Coast to Coast Pinball, so it should be easy. The download numbers were actually really great, mirroring what we were getting for Coast to Coast episodes, so that's really nice to see. I appreciate your guys' support on that. Those shows will be running concurrently and separately and independently, so good times there. Fast thought number 3. I haven't been to a pinball show or festival in months now. The last thing I did was Papa. I've missed some of the ones I really would have liked to have gone to this year due to what's been going on with my professional life and just sort of all that has entailed that schedule. And I missed Southern Fried Game Room Expo. Next weekend I'll be missing Pintastic in New England, which I'd really hoped to go to this year. There's been many others, and there'll probably be a bunch more I won't be able to make it to, but I'm having withdrawals. I want to go, back. Texas was a lot of fun this year. Papa was a lot of fun this year, and I'm really kind of looking forward to that next step out to go see a bunch of games, see a bunch of people, get to play, in that environment. I really love that about pinball. I do love the show circuits. It's one of my favorite things, and looking forward to Pinburg later this month. So, fast thought number 4. It's kind of killing me that there's new games out. The Ghostbusters has been shipped. I've played it a few times, but not all that much. I don't believe there's one on location in San Diego. My trips to the New York area, where there are some of those out on location, have been just whirlwind events where I couldn't really get out and play much pinball at night. So I feel bummed because, Ghostbusters has sort of been out for a while, and I just still feel like I haven't gotten to play it. Same could be said for The Hobbit. There are Hobbits out on location in places, and I just haven't had a lot of time on it. I need to get out and play more location pinball, get some more money in the coin slots, and truly be out of quarters. So just a thought of, I have some anxiety right now that I'm not out playing enough of these new games, because I'm always excited about the new games. I love to see what the great designers of modern pinball have come up with at any given moment. So looking forward to trying to sort some of that out in the not too distant future. And fast thought number 5, I was thinking about this today. I was showing Teresa something on my phone and on Facebook, and I was scrolling through trying to find it, and it was just, my feed is just, since Coast to Coast Pinball sort of quote took off and gained a listenership, I had a lot of people in the pinball hobby add me on Facebook. And at first I thought, man, I don't know who all these people really are all that great. Maybe I shouldn't add them. Maybe Facebook should be, this closed, really tight-knit network. But I think it's actually been a lot of fun to, follow and friend on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all these different platforms. A bunch of people that are just connected to pinball, either really directly, like people who work in pinball, or, directly to me, people who I meet and know and have relationships with, or people who are just, they listen to the show, they found me on Facebook, we have mutual friends, we follow each other, I get to see what they're doing in pinball. There's some people who really post a lot of great stuff, and I actually have come to realize that my Facebook feed is just a much better place, especially in election year, with lots of pinball machines and cats on pinball machines and balls stuck in odd places and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, than it would be without. So I'm actually really glad to have found all these online friends in pinball, because it makes my feed a happier, more pretty place, if you will. So there are 5 fast thoughts for episode 226.
Highlights and lowlights.
All right, you guys ready to hear a story? I'm going to tell you a story. This show, and I've said this on the show many times, so this is nothing new if you've been listening to the show. This show was never meant to be like a big thing. I never intended Coast to Coast Pinball to be such a part of my life. I thought it was just going to be my little, push towards being a part of the pinball community. I think a lot of people fall in love with pinball at different points in their life. Some people have been in pinball for 20, 30 years, 40 years. Some people have been in pinball for 6 months. And I think there's a tendency when you find something like pinball that has this draw to it, with the pure fun that can be had out of a hobby. It's just really a fun hobby. It's a tactile game. It's lights, it's dynamics, all the different tables, the history, the callouts, the sound, the life under glass, as you will. The ball is wild, if you will. All of that, I think, sparks something in people. And I've seen it time and time again. And we see it all the time, whether it be people wanting to build their own games, or wanting to, rewrite code for a game, start a podcast, start streaming, dedicate their Instagram feed or their Facebook feed to pinball, become a high-level player, host leagues, host tournaments. There's all these different things that I think it sparks something in you to start something that shows, I love pinball. I'm really into pinball. And you see that on all different fronts. And generally, it's all positive. There are the people that I think take it the wrong way and feel like we're, the newer folk in pinball, whether newer folk might mean the people just getting into pinball today or the people who've gotten in the past 3 to 5 years, are not like the OGs. They're not the old school, and they're somehow infringing on like my thing that I held personal. And where were you when I was like defending pinball when nobody cared 10 years ago? There's that too, and that's unfortunate because that's a pretty narrow-minded sheltered view of it, because the same thing that attached onto that person 10 years ago about pinball to make them love it has happened to someone new, and it just happened to not happen 10 years ago to that person. For whatever reason, it happened to them today. And the more people promote and talk about pinball and put pinball on location and operate games and host leagues, the more people are going to fall into the beautiful and engaging trap of fun that this hobby is. So Coast to Coast Pinball was that for me, because I wanted to add something to pinball. I wanted to talk about pinball. I didn't have a lot of pinball friends, so I thought I'll just talk to the internet about pinball. And it was really a very humble thing that I did. I just thought it would be fun because I always was into broadcasting and talking and radio and that sort of stuff. And I never imagined it would lead me into all these different experiences that I've had, whether it being invited to shows to judge something or to host something or to write a piece for something pinball related or what. I just didn't realize that this podcast would drag me into all these things. And it's been amazing. It's been amazing. So this is the story about how pinball is changed my entire life. Because this show, indirectly and directly on some level, led me this year to quit my job. I resigned from Taylor Guitars early this year. And it's been a weird circular story about me leaving and coming back, and a really confusing time on a lot of levels, and exciting. And it's still sort of happening, but I think I can talk about it enough now. But let's backtrack up to November of 2015. November of 2015, I went to Stern Pinball to record an episode of the web show, the YouTube show I've been doing, or have not been doing as of recent, because I haven't had the time to finish episode 4. It's coming, I promise. But I went to Stern Pinball to film an episode of Pinball with the Pros. And when I was there, I met people at Stern who I didn't really know. I knew Jody Dankberg. He's been on the show before. And I knew some of the designers really casually, not real serious or anything. But I ended up meeting some of the, I guess you'd call it the executive team at Stern Pinball. And we got into talks about what I do for a living at Taylor Guitars. I'm in sales. I'm a sales manager. For the last 4 years, I've managed the Northeast territory of the United States. I handle all of our dealers and accounts in New York, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, parts of Jersey. And I handle all the business that's in that. I've been repping, as they call it, sales rep, we call it repping, account managing, whatever you want to say, in the musical instrument industry since I was 23 years old. So like almost 15 years. And I got to talking to the people at Stern about, what I do and what they do and their business and how they were set up. And in what seemed like a flash of a moment, the idea came up that possibly my skills might fit in at Stern Pinball. And in that moment, when it was brought up to me, I actually was like, no, man, that's not what I'm looking to do. I'm here in a hoodie and jeans and, Chuck Taylor's to record a video with me and Josh Sharp playing The Walking Dead or whatever. And it wasn't expected. I wasn't looking for it. That's not what was on my mind. But it opened up a dialogue, if you will. And I left, I went home, and it was fine. Nothing happened, full speed ahead. But I did start talking to Stern about the possibilities of what it would look like if there was a position for me at Stern. Because, hey, on some level, that's like the dream job, right? Going to work at the largest, last major standing company in pinball, who's putting out the best, the most, and certainly the highest profile games, right? I think it's hard to argue that. That's really, I think, reaching their stride on this big comeback that has been the last, 7 years of their company. They've moved to this giant new facility, 100,000 square feet plus size facility in the past year and a half. And so it was interesting, but I didn't know. I didn't know if I was going to move to Chicago. I'm pretty entrenched. Taylor's a great company. I really do love the company. They've had my back. I believe in them. San Diego is a great city to live in. But we did start talking. And the more I started talking about it, the more I started seeing like maybe this was a reality. Maybe there was a way for me to work in pinball. And everyone says, don't turn your hobby into your work. And I totally disagree with that. I absolutely disagree with people who say that. I think I've been incredibly lucky in my life because I never wake up and think, oh man, I gotta go to work. Because I sell guitars for a living. I go to music stores and talk shop with music store owners about the guitar business and play guitars and show off guitars. It's hardly work. I mean, that's the big secret. If you can find a job that doesn't feel like work, life's a lot easier. So I've been really fortunate to do that. So when the concept of possibly going to work in pinball on some level came up, I was for it if it worked out. So some time went on, and I was talking to them, and I had to start considering how my discussions with them was affecting Coast2Coast Pinball, because I started feeling very aware of the fact I couldn't be, straight down the middle, perfectly neutral in, quote, my commentary, because this has always been a podcast. It's literally just my opinions. I report on stuff, I talk about stuff, and it's my opinions on stuff. But if I'm now getting to know the people that run Stern Pinball really well, how fair is it for me to then comment on not just Stern, but on anybody else in the industry, right? So I started backing off, and if you go back and listen to the shows, I'm sure you can see the points where I started dialing back commentary and such on what was happening in the pinball industry. It was fine to interview people who weren't working directly in it. It was fine to do that sort of thing. But as far as really dialing into the business of it, which I had kind of honestly really enjoyed doing, I had to sort of back off a little bit. And it's the timing of it all has been really interesting because I, for a while, didn't think it would happen. I didn't think that it was going to, and I just started going about my life as if that wasn't happening. And then, the year gets going. I'm back out working for Taylor, traveling a lot, and you start getting back into your normal day-to-day, but I'm still talking to Stern about, hey, maybe there's a possibility. And eventually, they made me an offer, and I accepted the offer. I told them I was coming. I signed paperwork. I was going to work for Stern Pinball. And I won't dive into all the details of all of it or what it was going to be, because I don't think that's fair to them at all. But I think it's totally fine to let the story out, because I'd rather be the one to tell it, because enough people do know that I would hate for somebody else to get to drive the narrative of how this all went down someday. I want it to come from me. So I did accept a position with Stern. And when I did, I put the show on hiatus. I had to. I didn't think I could run this podcast. In fact, the very top people at Stern asked me, well, what are you going to do with your podcast? And I told them I will end the podcast. It'll go away. And I was already plotting the wide world of pinball at this point, because there was nothing wrong, I believed, with a show focused on competitive pinball with an employee of a pinball company. I thought that was fine. But I couldn't do Coast2Coast Pinball the way it had been done going to work for Stern. It just wouldn't have been fair or the right thing to do. So I had ideas of maybe doing a Stern Pinball podcast. I thought that could have been really cool. We talked about that. But when I agreed to the position at Stern, and I was moving to Chicago. Teresa and I were moving to Chicago. Teresa resigned with her school district. She was not going to come back next year to teach. She was going to finish out this year. And our start date was set for the summertime. I don't know, right about now. And I had a few months there before I was actually going to be moving to Chicago. And I waited to tell Taylor, because I wasn't going to tell Taylor, 2 or 3 months ahead of time that I was leaving, because, that's not how you do things in the professional world. You need to give the appropriate amount of time. I certainly was not going to give Taylor a simple 2 weeks notice. They've been really good to me. They've been very generous to me, and I thought that 2 weeks was not enough time to give my employers a heads up that I was leaving, because my job is not easy to replace. It's pretty specialized, and so I gave them. What I ended up doing is I gave Taylor 5 weeks notice, and it was 4.5, 5 weeks. Just told them when the date was that I was leaving. Thanked them profusely. Told them it was an incredibly difficult decision to leave, but I thought the opportunity at Stern was fantastic. And it was fantastic. It was a really good opportunity that I think I would have excelled in. I think we would have worked well together. I think it would have been awesome. And Taylor accepted my resignation, said they're sorry to see me go, et cetera, thanked me for giving them so much time. I offered to help train my replacement. We generally promote from within, so I said, if you're going to move this person to my territory, I would gladly go train with them, show them the ropes, show them, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I was moving to Chicago, folks. I was going to work in pinball. And I went to Chicago. Teresa and I flew to Chicago. It was on the back end of one of my last trips with Taylor. I flew to Chicago, and I had been out there a couple times to interview with the company and discuss what this would look like, and meet with them directly. So we went to Chicago, and we looked at houses. I think we spent 4 or 5 days around Chicago, just driving neighborhoods, looking at school districts where she might want to teach. She applied at a school district. She got an immediate call back because she's awesome, and interviewed on the phone while we were in Chicago. We put money down on a house in Chicago on a rental place, a sizable check down on a house in Chicago, in a great neighborhood that we really were excited about. We crisscrossed that city over and over. We were getting really, really pumped up. Obviously, I know people from this show and from pinball in Chicago, and I was telling everyone, hey, I'm coming here, and it was exciting, and it's going to be fun. And we found, literally the perfect house. We were thrilled. We were making plans on what furniture would go where, and it was going to be awesome. And we spent time at the factory. We went to lunch with, some of the folks that run the company there. And, I think they like Teresa a lot, because who doesn't like Teresa? We looked at where I was going to work from in the office. It was really happening. I was really excited to do this. And we got back. And I'll give you the details on this, because I think it's fun. And if this is boring to you, I'm sorry. You probably just want to check out of episode 226 right now and join us on 227. But I'm going to go ahead and tell this just so it's out there and I can be done thinking about it. So I got back to work, and my credit card for Taylor had some fraud put on it. All right, the fraudulent activity. I stayed at a lot of hotels. You buy stuff in New York City bodegas, and people steal your credit card number and start trying to charge up $1,000 at Walmart in Dearborn, Michigan. That's just what happens sometimes. So they told me, come get your new card, because I had one big trip left with Taylor. I had a bunch of events left before my final date. So this is about 3 weeks before I was supposed to be done at Taylor. 2 weeks, maybe 2.5 weeks. And so I went to go get the new card, and the vice president of human resources at my company saw me when I went in to get the new card, and she grabbed me and she said, "Hey, I really need to talk to you." I said, "Hey, how are you?" And, this is someone I know. She hired me, 4 years ago. And I've talked with her about, the future and where I want to go with my career and that and all this and that, but don't know her all that well. And she said, "Why are you leaving? Why are you leaving?" And I said, I think the opportunity I have in Chicago with Stern is going to be really fulfilling, and it's going to be a lot of hard work, and it's going to be a chance to build something big and be a part of a great team of people who are, trying to solve problems, trying to get things done, trying to make them better tomorrow than they are today in an industry that I have a lot of attachment to, which is pinball. And she said, okay. And she said, I'm really disappointed because I have something in mind for you, but it's probably too late. And I actually said to her, yeah, it probably is too late, but I'm curious. And I said, what are you talking about? Because I don't know what she's talking about. I thought maybe she's going to offer me a little more money. And this was not a money thing. This had nothing to do with money. At no point was this about money. And she said, hey, I've had this idea of you working in this international position. And I said, well, that's interesting. Why now? Why are you saying now? She says, well, just timing of some changes we're making in our company, and I've been thinking about you, and then you go and resign. I said, well, yeah, that's weird that it happened that way. And she's like, well, I wish you the best. And I'm like, all right, great. So I went back over to my side of the company, back in the sales department, and I went and talked to my boss. And I said, hey, so I just talked to our VP. I won't drop names here, but I just went and talked to our VP of HR, and she's talking about this idea she had for me. And she actually did use the word, she actually asked me if I'd be open to a counter offer, which I had said to her. I said, I mean, it's probably too late. Teresa's on like job interview 4 of 5 at the school district. She's probably going to get hired. I don't know. Let me know. And so when I told my boss that, he said, wow, you should talk to her because that's not the way Taylor usually works. We don't really counteroffer people. Usually when people leave our company, it's really a good move for them or it's a good move for us. I said, yeah. And he said, would you be open to it? And I was in this really weird conflicted moment because just like when Stern first said to me, would you be interested in possibly working here someday? I was like, no, I'm really happy with where I am. And when I first heard, would I be open to a counteroffer from Taylor, I was kind of like, no, I'm going to Stern, man. I'm going to work in pinball, moving to Chicago. And I kind of sat there and thought about it. I said, well, I'd like to know what it is. And he said, well, you should call her. You should go back and call her. So as I walked over to my desk, my phone's ringing at my desk. And I picked it up, and it's the VP of Human Resources. I said, hey, I was just about to call you. She goes, come over to my office right now. So I went over to her office, and she pitched me an idea. And it was very much not an offer. It was very much a, if we did this, would you be interested? And I was like, yeah, actually, I would be interested. Me personally, in my life, there has been one thing that I've always sort of thought was like that, like, oh my gosh, what's your dream job? Like, what's your dream to do? And one of my things that's always been out there is to run a team, in some sort of sales capacity and do it internationally. And she pitched me something, I don't know, in the ballpark of that. Like, if we could do this, would you? I said, I might, yeah. I would need to know, but I'm committed to move to Chicago in 3 weeks. And she said, okay, well, we've got some things going on and I can't put anything in stone for you, but let's talk over the next week or so. So I was completely torn here. I didn't know what was going on. I'm like, what the heck? I've got this great offer that I've accepted and signed a freaking contract for to go to Chicago. And now the company that I've been working for, who I respect highly and think the world of, is talking about trying to make me an offer to keep me. Like, I really, at this point, did feel like the luckiest guy on the planet. So, as we talked more about what that would look like, the end game of that is likely, nothing's still set in stone to this date, the end game would likely be I would base myself out of Europe and work from Europe. And I did what I knew I needed to do here, and I went and talked to Teresa. And I said to Teresa, here's what they told me. So here's what it kind of comes down to. If they offer what I think they're going to offer, would you rather do that, leap of faith, move out of this country at some point, and I stay with Taylor, or do we follow through and go to Chicago and continue on this path? And she was sort of like, I want to do what you want to do. So we had this standstill moment of what do we want to do? And I just said, I need to see what Taylor's thinking before I can make a decision. And I did. I waited it out. And we got down to the very last minute to where Teresa was flying back to Chicago. It was a Thursday morning a few weeks ago. where Teresa had a flight to Chicago to have a final interview with the school district that she was probably going to get hired by in Chicago area. And I told Taylor that Monday, because they hadn't put anything in writing for me, and I just said, look, I have to know, like, I can't do this. I'm moving to Chicago in a few weeks. And they said, what's your drop dead date? Like, when do you have to know? And I'm like, Wednesday afternoon. And so Wednesday at 3 o'clock that week, I got called into the VP of Sales office. He offered me a position, which is an interim title right now, called an International Business Development Manager position, which is set up for me to gain international sales experience, key accounts, international sales experience, global concept experience, et cetera, with an end game of some things that I can't really get into right now. So as soon as I saw their offer, saw what it would look like, I was both totally excited because it was pretty amazing, and I had just this kind of pit in the stomach feeling because I knew I was going to take this, and I knew I was going to have to now call Stern at some point and tell them I wasn't coming to Chicago. So I know none of this relates to pinball directly. Just stick with me. So I accepted it on the spot, and it was pretty awesome. I got my resignation letter returned to me with the handwritten note, "Your resignation is not accepted," which I thought was pretty funny and kind of cool. I'll probably frame that someday. It was cool. And I stayed with Taylor. And I've already been on one big international trip. I flew to Amsterdam. We have an office in Amsterdam, the Netherlands. I went to see key accounts all over Germany. We went to Spain. Here we are on Saturday, July 2nd. I fly out Tuesday, July 5th for a week in Amsterdam at the office, and then a few days in London, seeing some accounts, doing some stuff. And I had to call Stern and tell them I wasn't coming, and I felt horrible because I got to know the people at Stern, and it's gonna make some things really difficult as this show goes on, because you get so close to not just a company but the people in a company, and it does change the way you view things. There's good people at that company. There's really good people who are trying their best to keep a lot of people working, employed via pinball. And it's a manufacturing company, first and foremost, just like Taylor Guitars is. And the Taylor Guitars machine works because we're all in love with guitars, and it makes us work hard to do it the right way. Just like the Stern Pinball Company is a machine that works because there's people there who are in love with pinball, and that drives them to do it the right way. So I have nothing but great things to say and think about the people at Stern. It was a very, very warm welcome, and it kind of broke my heart to call and tell them I wasn't coming, and I felt like I might be burning a bridge pretty bad when I did that. I'd never had something like that happen before, where you tell someone, yeah, I'm going to come do this, and you just don't because of circumstances changing. Some people in my life who believe in it was meant to be tell me that that's the reason the start date was pushed out, and that's the reason it didn't happen right away, as it gave Taylor time to realize I could work in this capacity for them, and it was, quote, meant to be. And I don't believe in meant to be. That's not my way of thinking at all in life. I believe that timing is a funny thing, and that's how things happen. So that's what happened to Coast2Coast Pinball, everybody. I was going to work in pinball. I couldn't do this show the way it was being done and be fair to anybody, obviously. So I had to stop it. I fully planned on this big announcement show where, hey, I'm working in pinball, and I expected the backlash of, oh, he sold out to go work for the man and all that nonsense. I was totally ready for it. But I'm not going to work in pinball. I am staying with Taylor Guitars. I'm very happy. The opportunity it's like I can't judge what's the better opportunity, but I can tell you that the opportunity at Taylor felt like what I needed to do based on my future, my career, my finances, all that stuff. It just felt like the move, and I'm pretty content with my decision. That does open us up to being able to do this show, right? So I can still comment on pinball. I can talk pinball. We're going to talk pinball. I need to let a little time pass. And I've been trying to let that time pass because it wouldn't be right for me to start diving in about all the things that Stern does, because A, I know a lot of stuff now. I got inside a little bit, and so I just can't do that to them. It wouldn't be right. It'd be a horrible move on my part. I would never do that. And B, it's not fair to the other people in the industry, for someone who sort of saw it from that side and knows some of the inner workings, to start then commenting on the other side. So this will be a casual ramp back up of Coast to Coast Pinball. We might talk about older games a little bit more, like the old days. We might do some interviews. In fact, we're going to do some interviews. I have a great interview lined up for the next few days that I'm excited to do. We're going to talk about experiences because, hey, look, I'm going all over the world right now. I have this next trip planned. We're going to find pinball in Amsterdam, maybe pinball in London. I found a KISS pinball machine in a guitar store in Germany. It was pretty awesome, with the alternate KISS logo, because they don't do the standard KISS logo with the two S's. It looks sort of like the SS from Nazi-era Germany. They use a different font for the S's on the KISS. I found that. I played that with the entire executive group of Taylor that was on that trip. They're like, oh, play it, because they all knew I was going to Stern, and so they wanted me to play the game. So here I am with like the owner of Taylor, one of the co-owners of Taylor, the VP of sales, the VP of marketing, the director of sales, all standing around me watching me play KISS pinball in like a sports jacket and shirt in a guitar store in Germany. It was pretty awesome. So I did get to Demon Multiball, by the way. So it's been a wild ride. It's been crazy. Teresa's going on this trip with me to Amsterdam. She's excited to go see it. And I will be honest with you, just between me and you guys, friendly listeners, I'm bummed that I'm not going to be, at Stern every day, at the company that's, I think, doing the most on the building side of pushing the industry forward. They're building a lot of games, got a lot of cool things coming out. So I'm still very much sad isn't the word, but it's a weird thing. It was a close thing. It was almost there, and I lost a couple $1,000s on my deposit on the house in Chicago. It was a very very real thing. It wasn't like, oh, maybe someday. It was like, no, we were moving to Chicago. So update on some other stuff. Just for those of you who followed around me and Teresa through the years, our precious little 15-year-old Minpin Sparta, he passed away last week, and it's been one of the roughest things we've ever dealt with. We don't have kids, probably won't have kids. I don't think that's for us. But this little dog was our kid, and he was old, and he was breaking down in front of us, and it was really tough because we've helped him along through blindness and diabetes for the past few years, and he had to leave us last week, and it was terrible. So that happened. So, but I'm dragging Teresa out of the country to get her mind off of it next week to Europe. So that's good, to try and not think about that as much as we have been. So I want to thank you. I had a lot of really great emails through the hiatus, which, it hasn't been that long. It's only been a couple months. But a lot of really great emails, people telling me what the show meant to them. I appreciate it. And hopefully we'll do some more good stuff. I fully intend on keeping Coast to Coast Pinball alive and going. And it'll have some different viewpoints. Probably have a nice European slant to it, and that'll be fun. I don't know how long I'll be in San Diego. I think there's a big major move coming down the road for Teresa and I, and that's exciting. We're really excited about that. And so that's kind of the story of pinball and this podcast getting me to quit my job that I love, take another job I probably would have loved, and then end up with a different job that I'm currently loving. And this podcast kind of got me there, which is bizarre and whatnot. So anyway, what I've got planned, like I said, this is episode 226. Episode 227 is booked. It's an interview show. I can't wait to do it. I've got Pinburg booked. I am 99% sure I get to go. I had a few work things sticking up that might keep me out. Really excited because I think that's the greatest pinball tournament on the planet. Cannot wait. Hopefully we can talk more about that in the upcoming weeks. If not here, definitely on Wide World of Pinball. I appreciate your guys' support. This show is going to end up around the 40-minute mark, so that's not too bad. And it's just my little story. Remember, this podcast is just my love letter to pinball, because I do love it, and it's so much fun, and the people drive it and make it great, and the games are absolutely special and fantastic. So we'll jump back into more current events, more thoughts, there's forum static to talk about. There's a lot of stuff going on, and I can't wait to discuss it and break it down and unpack it all on Coast to Coast Pinball going forward. So anyway, that is episode 226. Thank you guys for listening. Until next time, be nice to each other, take care of yourselves, and play more pinball.